Far too many students struggle with necessary assumption questions on the LSAT. The thing is, they're one of the most common question types in logical reasoning, so mastering them is essential, and the secret to solving them lies in one simple tool: negation. Today, I'll share with you exactly how to use negation to spot the correct answer to necessary assumption questions every single time. First, for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now, the great thing is that you can actually predict the answer to a lot of necessary assumption questions based on the gap in the argument, but of course, there are going to be some times where you can't, and instead you got to run through the choices and negate every single one. The negation technique is a simple yet powerful method for verifying that the answer you've chosen is in fact correct. Today, I'll break it all down for you. First, I'll explain what negation is and why it's so important. Then I'll show you step by step how to use it to solve necessary assumption questions. First off, what is negation? Negation is all about making a statement false, but we're not talking about opposites. Negation isn't about turning happy into sad. It's about turning happy into not happy. This is a small but very important distinction. You want to think of negation like flipping a switch. A statement logically is either true or false, and negation flips it to the opposite truth value. For example, the negation of all dogs bark isn't no dogs bark, it's that not all dogs bark. So you could see negation is precise. It doesn't add or remove anything extra. It just flips the truth of the statement. Now, necessary assumption questions ask you to spot the one assumption an argument depends upon. Without that assumption, the argument falls apart. This is where negation comes in. And the process is pretty simple. You negate each answer choice and ask yourself, does this need to be the case in order for the argument to work? Meaning, if it were not the case, if it were false, what would happen? The correct choice, when negated, makes the argument completely collapse. It destroys the argument's validity, and that's why it works. The argument is built on its underlying necessary assumption the same way a table is built on its legs. If you remove a single leg, the table collapses. Similarly, if you negate the necessary assumption, the argument cannot stand. So now I'll walk you through how to use the negation test step by step. But first, I wanted to let you know that if you're struggling with necessary assumption questions, how to properly negate, or anything else preventing you from scoring a 170 or above on the LSAT, my team and I would be glad to help you out. At LSAT Unplugged, we offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching, and we can personalize a program just for you based on necessary assumption questions and negation if that is what you need. You can check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Now, here's how to use the negation test step by step. Step 1, understand the argument. Start by laying out what's the conclusion and what are the premises. Ask yourself, what is the author trying to prove and what evidence are they using to prove it? Next, evaluate the answer choices. Look at each one and ask yourself, does this need to be true in order for the argument to work? Step 3, negate each answer choice. Ask yourself, well, if this weren't true, what would happen? Flip the truth of the statement. In other words, negate. So if the original statement is, some successful entrepreneurs do not have mentors, the negation would be, no successful entrepreneurs do not have mentors. Or put more simply, no successful entrepreneur lacks mentors. Or in other words, every single entrepreneur has a mentor. Now test the negation. If the negated statement destroys the conclusion, it's got to be the correct answer. Now, I'll walk you through some common mistakes I see students making when they negate. The biggest one is over-negating. You are not looking for the polar opposite, you are looking for the logical opposite. So for example, the negation of I love coffee isn't I hate coffee, it would be I do not love coffee. So avoid going too extreme, avoid going too far. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see students making. Another example of this would be the negation of tall isn't short, it's not tall, which would include people of an average height. So remember, again, negation isn't about finding the opposite. The opposite of tall isn't short, it's not tall. And this is why you want to be really careful with your quantifier words, your quantity words like all, some, and none. So remember, the opposite of all isn't none, it's not all when it comes to the LSAT. Again, the logical opposite of all is not all. The logical opposite of some is none, meaning not even one. And the logical opposite of none is some, meaning at least one exists. Very important to keep these in mind. Now, while the negation test is incredibly useful for necessary assumption questions, you don't want to use it for sufficient assumption questions or strengthen or weaken questions. This is a specific tool you want to use in specific cases. I know that when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, but you have to use the right tool for the right job. The negation test works for necessary assumption questions because you are looking for something that is required for the argument to work, meaning if that thing were not the case, the argument falls apart. However, for sufficient assumption questions or strengthen or weaken, you're opening the door to new information that doesn't necessarily have to be true, but if it were true, might help, or in the case of weaken questions, hurt the argument. So remember, the right tool for the right job. Negation is a great tool for necessary assumption questions in particular. Now again, if you'd like my help in mastering necessary assumption questions, mastering negation, or anything else on the LSAT on your journey to scoring a 170 or above, my team and I would be glad to help you out. So check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.